so we're going to go through network analysis, and it would not be a bad idea to kind of read through some of this stuff in Price, because she explains a little bit of the terms about running networks, configuring them. When you run a network analysis data set, there's some real specific ways you have to set it up. Turn that off. And and it's not, we're pretty lucky to get this with our package because it's a pretty expensive tool. And so here's kind of the Esri blurb on that. You can get a free trial, but they talk about identifying service areas. So from this point, how far can you get in 20 minutes? And they can do it based on time and also distance. So they can run these routes because you have those criterion in the road file data set. It will give you a field for how long it would take to cover that distance at whatever speed the road is set for in that way. And so then they've got these great spider charts. I don't think Price goes into that, but at the end of the tutorial, they have you could actually work through that. And this is kind of the background behind emergency management, right? So if I am sitting at a computer and I know the fastest route from a school to the hospital, I can put those two addresses in, and I can tell the driver, map it out immediately, which is the fastest way. But let's say there's a bridge out. So I could put a blockade or a impedance on that road section, and it will automatically recalculate what's the fastest way to go, given that you can't go there. So it's a really fun little tool. And so what I have for you is a zipped file, and in the file there is a tutorial that was from, I think I cleaned yours up a little bit. This is my original. But this tutorial was from a workshop I took at a professional meeting. So it was a half-day workshop learning how to use Network Analyst. And it was made for ArcGIS 9.2. So it's 2009. So there's a few things that are going to be different when you go through setting up your tool. But in reality, that's kind of the way this is going to work for you for the rest of your lives. You're going to find a really cool, when we started doing raster analysis the first year, all of the tutorials were set for an older version. They hadn't updated the tutorials, and they had made a major change from running everything in Visual Basic to running everything in Python. So all the tutorials still had Visual Basic code, and we had to sit down and say, okay, we're stuck here. Now, how is that different? So there's a few things in here that will be a little bit different from what you could expect. So I'm going to extract yours, and I'm also going to go ahead and so your tutorial is a little bit cleaner. I think I took out all the red pieces, and I think it is in general many pages long, but we're only going to do the first 30 or so. Okay? And so the first part of this goes through kind of all the pieces of the software. So there's something called a route solver. There's service areas. These are the different functions that you could do with the transportation or the network analysis. So with route solver, that's just how fast or how far is something. And you could send, if you were a school delivering lunches, and one school starts at, you'd have to have one lunch ready by 11 and the last lunch ready by 1, you could set up your route so that you knew where to start and where to end, and then which is the best way to go for all of those. Service areas are what we're going to try to use for the tsunami project, in that a service area starts with a point. So let's say Lane Community College, and I want to know if I take any road leading out from Lane, how far can I get in 20 minutes? And it will create a polygon along all those roads that says, okay, you can get to the edge of all of this area in 20 minutes. And so we're going to kind of run that a little bit backwards for the tsunami. And then there's a couple others, distance, cost matrix, and closest facility. So all kinds of things that you could work through. So in the folder you have a point file for hospitals, a point file for schools, a point file for centers. There's a street layer, and then there is the Las Vegas City layer and some railways and things like that I'm not sure why they have in there. Then this tutorial, it's really assuming people have very, very little ArcGIS experience. So they go through connecting to the catalog, finding your data, because these things are pretty open to anybody who's just interested and hasn't done it. But you'll see that in the geodatabase, they have a special feature data set that's called transportation. And you need to have the transportation feature data set will be created for you already. But you will set up what's called the network here, which has that little grid and the lines through it. And that needs to be inside the transportation feature data set with your road file. Whatever you want to use for a network, those things need to be together. And then when you add your network file, it will say something like, do you want to add all the associated pieces? And you can add those into your map. So they'll walk you through all of that. When you open up your analysis toolbar, you get these visual pieces in the toolbar that help you kind of analyze the routes. So there'll be a route line that shows you, which is the best way to go, where your barriers are, where your stops are, and when you run an analysis, anything that violates a time, let's say you have to you have to deliver this at 10 o'clock, and if you run your analysis and you're there at 10:15, that will light up, and you'll know, okay, something's wrong with this process. The network analysis toolbar they show you how to add a toolbar if you don't know how to do that. And I find it a tricky little booger, and so we'll kind of show you how that works. But then when you've started a network process, you can add stops. So the first lab takes you through adding all these hospital stops and then finding out the shortest distance and the quickest distance to, starting at shop 1 or hospital 1 going to hospital 2. So when you get in here, they start just saying, okay, this is what your data set looks like. Open up your catalog tree. And they do a lot of their work in ArcCatalog. Let's see, I tried to highlight a couple things that I didn't want you to miss, like that needs to be inside the feature data set. And one thing to pay attention to is the fields that are in your road data, and we'll look at that in just a minute, that are really critical for you to be able to run this analysis. And one of them is some kind of distance. So each segment of the road has a length, right? And then if I know what the speed is on that piece of road, I can figure out how long it would take you to travel, that piece of road going at that speed. And that's basically the way that's calculated. And then there is a special calculation in here that lets you determine the actual speed for that section, right? So if you have we'll look at this in a minute, and that will help. But you may need this formula later to calculate your own road distances. And then some roads have a Z level, which means it's an underpass or an overpass. So, and roads can be identified as one-way or two-way roads. So you're going to go through kind of looking at that road file, then with the roads, you have, what's really important here, this is probably one of the more important things, and people forget this all the time, is that you have to run the integration tool on your roads. And the reason you do this is that the roads have to be connected. There has to be coincident geometry. So if I have a gap between the end of one road and another, if I have a dangle where one goes over or a gap, then my flow is going to stop and my network won't work and it'll be broken. And sometimes when you use your own data, this is what becomes really crazy, because we're going to try it with some data that the U of O hosts on their website. And you'll find little dangly roads that don't line up. And sometimes I had students create bicycle paths, and then they wanted to run the network analysis, but they weren't careful to make sure that those roads snapped. One of the problems, I don't know if I'd like to do this on the whiteboard, and I don't have a drawing tool. Do I have a drawing tool? I could do it on here. Hold on, let me just do a draw thing here. Okay, so insert. You should get something like Bamboo. It lets you kind of draw. So one of the things students do when you ask them to digitize roads is they'll say, okay, here's Highway 101 along the coast, and here's, what is the highway to Florence? There's the highway to Florence. Yeah, Highway 11 that goes out. Well, in reality, they've made Highway 101 a continuous line, right? And there should be a vertex or a junction right here where these two roads intersect. And so if you don't have Highway 101 split right here with that intersect coming in between it, then your traffic is going to stop there and not flow. And you're not going to be able to model turning onto that road or not. So when I was just working with 245 folks, and I was trying to get them to digitize, here's one section, and then the next section of the road starts right there where the other road comes in. So it's really important that you, when you make your own roads or you look at your own roads, that you run that integration tool, and it will fix the non-really horrible problems. If you've got really big gaps, it may not fix them, and you may have to kind of go through and see what's going on with those roads, and that becomes kind of tricky. So you'll run the integration tool, and you do that in. They show you where to find that in data management in the toolbox. They show you what to input, and then you run that. And then you're going to create your network data set. And the network data set, then again, you just do that by clicking on the featured data set, new, and there's your network data set. If you're doing this at home, you want to make sure that you've set the extension for network analysis. I think I set them all here, so it should be good to go. But at home, you may have to set that. And then, what's the name of your network data set, and then which features are going to participate. So you're going to put in the streets. And then there is an out of order page, and I don't know if I think I fixed that. But she has two boxes that come in different orders than they used to into the settings. So if you don't see the setting box, skip down, just go on to the next one, and you'll find it. It'll work out fine. It doesn't seem to matter which order you do these. So let's see. I think it says you're going to model turns, and we're going to say yes. Then we'll keep going to the next, and I think that's the part that they missed. And then you're going to do connectivity settings, and then you're going to be able to identify subtypes of roads. And when we do our roads, we won't have subtypes. But subtypes are like highways versus local streets. And there are three different streets: highways, major roads, and local streets. And all of those will have different speeds connected with them. And then you say, okay, And then you want to click on your connectivity. Where are they connecting? So local streets are going to connect at endpoints, or I think you're going to set that up to look like that. It should look like the box below. So you're going to, the local streets go in at any vertex, and the others are just at endpoints. And then she talks about the fields, whether you're going, this is the from and to fields, FZ and TZ, because some streets are bidirectional and some aren't. So this is another code that may be or may not be in your road data. Really good road data will have all of this stuff. So this is, if you have that, you can measure elevation, so you can go underpasses or overpasses. And then here's where you set your attributes, where this is where the actual calculations come in, and what kind of data that is. And the one way will only be in this exercise. We won't have it when we're doing that. And then you're going to, let's see, establish driving directions. That's good. Go through that. And then there's your network. Now, if you've got ArcMap open when you do this, this automatically gets added to your table of contents. And so the next part, she tells you to add it, but it should already be there. And then you start using the solver, right? So the solver, when you add the network analyst, it has all these little windows for starting a new route. And once you start the new route, you get this layer that shows you just the different route attributes. And then you can load the hospital locations from here. And it works pretty well. And I think you'll be really successful with it. But let's just open up the road file so you can take a look at that piece. All right. So here I am. I've got the streets, and I have the edges and the vertices, which this is like the connection for where every road connects to another road. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the vertices off. And I turned the edges off because those are actually the street lines as well. And then if I add the network analyst, LMNO, there it is. There's the toolbar. And we can open up the attributes for the roads and just take a look at these roads. Okay, I hate when that thing docks. There we go. So this road file would be used for network analysis. It would also be used for geocoding, because you see for many of the street segments, there is an address from the left side of the road and an address range to the right side of the road. And this is the way that if I have a list of addresses and road names, then with geocoding, it will go in and say, okay, there's Moccasin Road, and does this point, is it on the left side or the right side? Is it in between these? And it'll put a point where those things are. But for what we're looking for today for using network analysis, these are the fields that they're talking about. So for this segment of road, the speed is 25, I'm going to assume miles per hour. And as we scroll back here, this road section is 12 meters long. And so it would take this many minutes to travel this length of road at that speed. Okay? So if I have the length of the road, the segment, and the speed for that segment, I can use that formula and calculate the minutes that would be covered. And if you went back to the tutorial, minutes and meters were the two elements that we added into that data, because that's what it's going to calculate, how many minutes or how many meters it takes to do that. So, oh, I lost my table of contents. There we go. Well, everything undocked. How cute is that? All right. So if I'm going to go into network analysis, I can click on New Route, and that's just right here with the new route. And if I click on the analyst window here, so let's see, new routes from the download, and then that gives me my analyst window. And here's where I can add those hospital stops. So I can right-click, load locations to go find them, add those hospitals. Okay. And then this is where I set up those parameters, the route properties. So when I click on this, I can set that analysis to be, I want to have you figure out what's the fastest or what's the shortest. So I can set that minutes. I can allow for turns, right? If I say, okay, you can go two-way, I could put that on there. So there's a bunch of different settings and time attributes. So I'm going to leave this at minutes, say okay, and then I'm going to turn off some of these other layers down here. Retail centers, okay. And then I'm going to turn the roads off because I don't really need those. And then I'm going to, this is the solver. So if I click the solver, it will run my my analysis there. Pretty slick. And so here's my solver, and I can click to this, and this window tells me, okay, so I'm going to start at the University Center, and then I'm going to go west. That will take me 1 minute. So altogether, it was 31 miles and 51 minutes to take that route. I can also, in those stops, decide, well, you know, let's go 1, 2, let's put 6 at the end because they don't really care when they get their stuff. So I can just drag and drop that. I can run my solver again, look at my directions, and say, oh, well, I made it worse. So, okay. So then with the route properties, I can say, well, let's see what's the shortest distance. And I can run the solver on that. Oh, well, that was pretty funny. So giving it that order, I save 2 miles doing it that way. Okay. So the other thing you can do is you can add your own points. So let's say, oh, you know what, I need to put in another stop. So there's a way to add a graphic stop. Like I forgot I need to stop here. So you can add that, name it, and put that in your analysis. The other thing you can do is put in barriers. And so if I wanted to put in a barrier, I wonder if I could load locations. I don't know if they have any good barriers on this. Let's look. I don't think they have, but I could load those schools as a barrier. Okay, and then I could run that. And if any of those schools are on the road, which I'm not sure they are. Oh yeah, so I completely isolated that hospital if I use those barriers, right? So that hospital is not on my network anymore. Because the way the schools were lined out, I said, okay, you can't, if there's a barrier here, you can't go that way. And this poor place was apparently completely covered in barriers. So barriers could be bridges, they could be traffic jams or a wreck, anything like that. So basically that is kind of running through the network analyst. Let's see, which way do I remove the route? Yeah, I remove the route. And then the other thing we're going to go through is doing a service area. So instead of a new route, you would pick service area. And I'm going to load something smaller. So I'm going to load, no, facilities. I'm going to load location, that's right. So I want to say those retail centers, right, are my service areas, and I want to know how long it would take somebody, how many people could walk to that retail center in 10 minutes. or let's say 5 minutes. So in the impedance up here, I'm going to say, okay, in 5 minutes, how long would it take anybody around there to walk to one of my service areas? So I go ahead and run that. They take a little longer because they're looking at that retail center and calculating out 5 minutes along every single road that impacts that retail center. So this would take a little while to run that. So basically, that's kind of that's the summary of this tutorial. It works really well. And then the trick will be we're going to try to calculate or create our own road files for coastal roads so we can run network analysis and service areas on that other part. You guys have any questions, all of you? Such a full group today. John, you're thinking hard.
Yeah, I'm just thinking for all the like one-way roads, those are just coded for naturally, like downtown Eugene has a bunch of one-ways, but I know in like the Gulf Coast area they basically turn all highways one-way going out, so you like for hurricanes and stuff, so that all major roads you're just going away from the coast. Do they code for that?
You know, you can turn that on or off. So you can turn one way off so that you ignore that. So I guess maybe I don't understand the question.
Well, I saw in the like the attribute table that they have the field for one way.
Right.
It says a couple of them are coded TF or FT.
Thoroughfare, maybe?
Well, some are TF and some are FT, so I'm like even to from to.
Yeah. Oh, that's to and from, right? So those are segments that I'm not sure. I'd have to look at that and see. Yeah, I'm wondering if they have a different network for emergencies that they would run stuff.
Because I know for evacuation routes, everything changes based on
Right,
that.
right. Well, and we're going to be looking at it from the coast as far as no traffic, as far as running, right? Walking or running speed. So we don't care about the one-way or overpass or underpasses. We're going to use bridges as non-usable. So every time there's a bridge, that's going to be a block. And if it's in a landslide area, that's a potential block. So we'll be kind of putting in barriers based on those things and trying to run it that way. I'm not sure why this is not running, but maybe retail areas. But I did do hospitals last night, so I might have forgot a spot or something. But it will run for you, and it's kind of a fun project. Oh, one other thing. You've got to make sure when you create your own data that your roads and your feature data set is in a projected coordinate system. Anybody have an idea why that would be important? And not a geographic coordinate system.
Got the whole decimal degrees thing here.
Yeah. So if you run the data that you're going to get to practice with later has a geographic coordinate system. And if you run that, you're going to get inaccurate distances. You've got to make sure that your feature data set is in some kind of units that has an actual linear measurement. Okay. So it's on Moodle and it's zipped, and if there's something wrong with that, I can put it on the R drive too. But I think it'll work well for you. So that's kind of fun, and you can just be an agent of chaos in the city traffic.